Welcome back, everyone. Adam Lafacci, your moderator, rejoining you, and thank you for joining us for this next session. We're going to be taking a look at the Will to Adorn Youth Access Project, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Ann Kugler now to start talking with us.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. Sally and Diana, thank you so much for the opportunity to jump in and join in on this presentation. We're going to do our best here. We have a lot of young people who have been participating in this project, and we can't have as many phones as we like, so we're going to do our best to get everybody's voices in here and to include everybody in the conversation. But if you have any specific questions for young people, they're here, so just let us know. So I guess just to get started, I wanted to give a quick overview of AS220 Youth. AS220 is a free arts education program in Providence, Rhode Island. We work with many, many young people every year, but we have a special focus on working with kids in the juvenile justice and child welfare systems. We have 3 teaching sites. One is UCAP Middle School, one is our downtown studio, and the other is the Rhode Island Training School, which is the state's juvenile detention facility. And we work very, very hard to build relationships with young people while they're incarcerated so that they will come down to AS220 afterwards and continue their creative work with us. Ideally, we meet a young person and then we have a few years to work with them before they move on to whatever their next thing is, and young people develop portfolios while they're here. We have 2 sort of major programs, an after-school program, which, like Jenna's program, it's a 21st Century Community Learning Center program, and our 2 teaching sites for that grant are UCAP Middle School and the Training School. And then we have an apprentice program for young adults, and that's for people ages 17 to 21. Young people, that's for people who are not in school, and they come to AS220 in the morning and work on large-scale commissioned projects for the most part. So it's much more like a work program than, coming to a painting class or photo class. And this is a bunch of young people in our recording studio, the Delgado studio. And Talia wants to make sure that you know that that's her in the way back with the updo happening. So I guess, like some of the other, Jenna's questions, I guess I was just curious about where people are calling in from. I know Jenna is working with middle school students, and it seems like there are a couple middle school people here. But, some of the factors that I think when I was thinking about what makes a Will to Adorn project happen, it would be what type of organization and whether you already have some capacity to do video work, at what age the kids are, and how much time you get to have with them. So if anybody wants to weigh in on that, I'll just keep tabs on the questions or comments area. So I'll just keep tabs on that, and we can go back if folks have any comments about that. And I did see the question about apprentices. Apprentices are paid. That is a work program, so they get a weekly stipend every week. And yeah, that helps. So we got teens and middle school students. Okay. So I guess just to talk a little bit about our process here. When Sally got in touch with me last year, Charlene, who is here with us and will weigh in a minute, and I went down to Washington. We went to the excellent training that was offered just prior to the Folklife Festival, and we started wrapping our heads around the project. Because we're about to jump into our summer employment program, we didn't start on the Will to Adorn project right away, and this fall we've slowly been working our way into it. I would say because we're a big community-based organization and we try to provide access a lot of different ways for a lot of different types of young people. It hasn't been as structured as our approach hasn't been as structured in some ways as what Jade was talking about with her the Mind Builders program. So we talked to people about Will To Adorn in the community meeting, and then we just started having a lot of planning meetings and a lot of brainstorming sessions. And so when young people heard, the kind of concept behind the Will To Adorn project, we just started making tons of whiteboard lists about different types of projects that would be cool to do. From our planning conversations, it pretty quickly became clear that some young people were just interested in spending the afternoon with it. Other people wanted to invest the next year of their life working on a really complicated project. So over the past few months, we've developed a kind of tiered way for people to get connected. And just to give you an example, so we have some low commitment projects, and then we have some more, some group projects that involve more time and more involvement from young people. And then we have the very, very high commitment, intensive projects where young people are taking a strong leadership role. And the reason that I have these two faces on screen is just to talk you through an example of one of the low commitment projects. A young man came to us. He wasn't very psyched about making things. He didn't really consider himself an artist. He wasn't really sure whether he liked the idea of the Will To Adorn project, not really totally feeling it. But when I sat down with him, I said, man, you love rap. You can spend all day, every day listening to hip hop. And hip hop guys have so much style. They got such great looks going on. They're, to use some of the phrases that Jade used, there's so many cultural markers on all the big hip hop stars that are out there. And so I asked him to think about one aspect of hip hop style that he thought was cool or interesting, and he brought up the idea of grills. And just by working through a few different questions about grills, like where did those come from? Who was the first one to start like rocking grills when they were doing shows and things like that? We started doing some research. We got on the internet, and we found this article that talks about the history of the grill and how it was connected to the really miserable dentistry that African Americans were getting during slavery, and that a lot of them had, unusual or artificial looking dental things put in their mouths, and that actually Flava Flav and the people who originally started wearing grills were, making a cultural reference back to slavery. And we also found that the first person to kind of bring it into the hip hop world was this guy, Eddie Plain, who ran a small business in Brooklyn called Eddie's Gold Teeth. And he was the guy who hooked Flava Flav up with his grill, and, the rest is hip hop history. So just in the afternoon, we were able to start with one little detail from a look that Lil Wayne, had in one of his photos, and we were able to talk about cultural markers, traditions that came out of slavery, small business in Brooklyn, and then how sort of corporate media and things like that can take what is a real local fashion, style, or tradition and make it, a kind of global phenomenon. So right now we're going to start talking about some of the group projects, and Mike and Ryan are here to talk about hip hop project that they've been working on. So I'm just going to hand the phone over now to Ryan.
Hello. Yeah, so we have a lot of different projects that we're working on around the studio, and so one large group project that we've been working on is documenting hip-hop swag. So here at AS220 Youth, we have a hip-hop group called Zoo Crew, and we have been kind of documenting members of this group style. We've been recording their shows, but also when we go to the shows, you notice at hip hop shows, people, as those who follow hip hop will say, people just swag out. And so we engage youth in different ways. From some folks will operate the camera, some folks will be designated to work to do editing, and young Mike, a member of Zoo Crew, who I'm going to introduce you to, he does a lot of the interviews. So I'm going to hand the phone over to Mike.
Mike, you just want to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Mike Johnson, aka Young Mike, and I'm here to introduce you to the video that we have put together from the interviews we had in Boston and also at our show and in the AS220 community.
Okay, here we go.
Yes.
What is that one color you try to fit into your coordination when you're getting dressed?
I usually like to wear black or white, and if black or white doesn't work for me, I either just try to match with something.
I always like to have, a color that expresses me that day.
My outfit today is basically like the Zoo Crew uniform.
I'm wearing this Zoo Crew shirt. You know what time it is because we got a show going on right downstairs. I can't wait to perform on stage. I gotta kill it.
What person comes to your mind when you think of swagging out? Man, I'm thinking like Andre 3000. I'm thinking CeeLo.
Kanye West, T.I.
I try to think of what everyone else around me is not wearing.
Labels are overrated. I like just anything that looks good.
Most of the things I wear, I've made. Like, everything about me is different. Like, I like being different. I like standing out.
Everyone has their own definition of fashion. I guess you have to figure out where you fit in and how you fit in. And at some point you get it. At some point you figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. But until then, keep it fresh, keep it cheap, keep it used, keep it clean, and make it look alright. You know what I mean?
That was the video, the swag video that we did. Some was in Boston, some was out here, and there was a couple of videos that we shot that was before the show that we had for our record release. And Miss Ron, her name was Rania. Rania helped us with with some of the interviews. Here's Ryan back.
Great. So when we're working on group projects, get rid of this video. Right here. Okay, so sorry about that. So when we're working on group projects, these are some of the tips we kind of think about. We don't just kind of throw someone out with a camera and hope for the best. We think a lot about composition. We think about storyboarding. It's so important to focus on pre-production when you're planning a video, because if you have clear vision in mind about, what kind of voiceover you're going to have, where you're going to shoot, you'll know, for instance, okay, I know I'm going to shoot outside, so I know I won't, need a light kit, but I know that I'll need, a specific microphone to get good audio. So we talk about everything from composition to good audio, having people have very clear roles. So we know that one person is going to be the editor. And since somebody had been focusing on pre-production while we're editing, we have a clear goal of what shots are going to be in what order, and we don't have to worry too much about coming up with the right composition by the time we get to editing, and we can just make quick cuts and know right on paper what we're going to be putting where.
Unfortunately, because we're running a little bit late, Talia has to run out and leave us. But she just wanted to say hi to everybody and talk quickly a little bit about her connection, and we'll see some images from her project. But I just she's been waiting here all afternoon to say hello to everybody, so I just want to get her on the phone. Yes.
Hi, my name is Talia DeRosa. What inspired me to do this project for Cape Verdean culture, you'll see the picture in a moment, but I kept telling everyone to try Cape Verdean food because it's amazing, and I thought it would be so much fun to do a blog about Cape Verdean culture. And from there, I started a big project. We had a Cape Verdean community dinner here at AS220 Youth in Providence. From this project, I learned how to do a storyboard. I learned more about video editing and Photoshop. I'm a lot more experienced with interviews as well. When I first did an interview, I was nervous and I didn't know what to do, but now I feel confident and I'm ready to kill it. Just want to let you guys know. Cheers, and
Okay, so I'm sorry that Talia's going to have to go, but we have some other good projects to talk about. So the lady in the picture that you're looking at right here is Gigi Adamo. So when Gigi heard about the Will To Adorn project, she got very, very excited about it because Gigi and her family are from Sierra Leone. Several aunts and her sort of extended family network are seamstresses, and they specialize in creating contemporary fashions using traditional African clothing, cloth, Ankara and Kente cloth. And so Gigi's idea instantly was to have a big fashion show. So on January 23rd, we're going to have a fashion show here at AS220, and Gigi and Charlene, who you're going to be hearing from in a minute, have already done a model call and are starting to figure out all the clothing and accessories and styling and things like that are going to be part of this fashion show. And we'll also be showing our Will To Adorn videos and just have it be a night to kind of celebrate our involvement in this project. And then next up, we have another large, ambitious, independent project by a young woman named Charlene, who's here with us. I'm going to put Charlene on the phone, and then she's going to just do a quick intro for her project and talk a little bit about her involvement in Will To Adorn.
So I decided to do my project about my family. I live in Providence, but my mother is from Lexington, Kentucky, and the matriarch of the family, her name was Big Mama, and or Mama Betty, and she wore a lot of hats, and she was very stylish, and she kind of influenced the rest of the family, and I thought it was just a great example of an intersection of African American culture and fashion, looking at my great-grandmother's sense of style. So when my family went on vacation to visit the family that I have in Lexington, I brought a camera and a tripod and an audio recorder, and I interviewed 10 different members of the family, some of her children, some of her grandchildren, to tell me about her, to tell me about her sense of style. And then I also photographed her extensive hat collection. Yep.
And she was a small woman, but she loved these big hats. And as she got older, there was a hat shop called Hunter's Hatters here in Lexington. The owner is Miss Lucille Jackson. And I was talking to Miss Lucille Jackson the other day, and she said, your mom would call up and say, do you have any hats? I need a nice big brimmed hat. So she would always emphasize the brim.
She had a special way of tilting her hat. There was a hat contest or something, and of course I didn't wear hats, but I went out to her house and I borrowed one of her hats, and of course she picked out a hat for me, and she put it on my head, and she tilted it a certain way, and she of course shopped downtown. She worked for Wolf Wow's, which was a pretty high-class clothing store. She cleaned up for their family.
I think the way that she dressed actually showed how she felt about herself. It's like you just portraying who you are.
Does anybody have any questions about my project?
And I don't see any questions yet, but I do see one comment in here saying how she dressed expressed how she felt about herself. Nice. Yeah, that was a really beautiful point. Beautifully articulated.
Thank you.
And Sally mentions that portraying who you are goes right back to our earlier discussion about what style is. This has been a really beautiful tie-in to what we were talking about before as well. And how many family members did you interview?
Although here at AS220 Youth, there's a lot of people who just want to document what's happening at our hip hop shows and things like that. Charlene's project is a really, really nice example of being able to do an oral history and connect with people from other generations. I heard a lot of that in some of the other programs and projects that we heard from earlier this afternoon. Just moving on, Talia, who has already had to run out the door, is working on a Cape Verdean culture project. She, like Gigi, she sort of got rolling with her project through having an event here and bringing in the foodways traditions from Cape Verdean culture. So we had a huge Cape Verdean feast here. We had Cape Verdean music and dance, and she started interviewing several family members about Cape Verdean traditions. And we've been able to connect with some other sort of culture bearers of who are from Cape Verde here in Providence. And, one of the things that Talia that we've seen in Talia's work is that she started out really, really not being sure about how to use a digital camera or how to interact with people in an interview setting. And from her earliest interviews to the point where she was interviewing this gentleman, her interviewing skills just got so much more sophisticated, and she was able to kind of zero in on some of the markers in people's just sort of day-to-day dress and be able to help them talk about the significance of the meaning even behind, their necklace, their hat, or a certain symbol that was in their clothing or attire. So it's been really, really exciting to watch her development. I think pretty much whether it's people involved in sort of low commitment, medium commitment, or sort of high commitment independent projects, I would say that there's like a whole variety of skills that young people have gained. But I would say most importantly, it's critical thinking, just being able to think sort of abstractly about a concept and then be able to find ways to tell that story visually and with audio recordings. We have talked a lot about what anthropology is. Just having people write blog entries has sort of helped them get more excited about writing and working towards improving some of their literacy. And, of course, they've gotten better digital photography, video, and audio skills. So it's been exciting to watch all of that happen here. I think we still feel like we're very much in the early phase of our involvement with the Will To Adorn project. I think I've told Sally and Diana sometimes our community can feel like a big organism, and you put an idea in there, and it takes a while for it to sort of metabolize and move through the system. And so I feel like we're actually just sort of ramping up with this. Although the videos that you've seen are like great accomplishments already, I feel like we've made a lot of progress, but we have a lot further to go. And we're hoping to collaborate with some of the other youth access groups and have a summer employment session in 2014 that's really, really focused on the Will To Adorn ideas and concepts. And I think I'm going to hand the phone off to Ryan one more time to talk about some of the impacts for young people, and then I can bring it back and talk about how our involvement has impacted AS220 as an organization.
So just taking a look at youth long-term impacts, it's such a way to learn everything from digital literacy to critical thinking skills by just jumping in on these projects. There are so many aspects, in particular in video production, where you have to learn, how to brainstorm a project and narrow down the focus, and then write a script, write interview questions, learn how to, follow up on those questions when actually in the pressure of conducting a video interview. At the end of the day, there are so many skills youth gain from participating in these projects that their resumes just look awesome. And, in terms of digital literacy, they're working with programs from Adobe Photoshop to Adobe Premiere, which is video editing software, to, helping create strategies to promote their participation in projects online and then present it to an audience, to our community and to folks, community at large. I'm going to hand over to Anne. She can talk about the organization impact.
Which should be interesting, but maybe I'll hand it back to Mike so he can talk about what he liked about interviewing, because that might be more interesting late in the afternoon than listening to me talk about organizational benefits.
Hi. The interviews, it was some of them was a little rough, but most of them was, a lot of it went smoothly, because most of the people that we interviewed, they get dressed and swag out on a daily basis, and so it was easy to interview. And some of the guys in Boston, it was easy to interview. Some of the people out here was easy to interview, because a lot of the younger people that go to like middle school and stuff, and then just now starting in 9th grade, they dress differently from how other people used to dress when we used to go to high school. Because when I was in high school, there was no Kevin Durant or no LeBron James sneakers out. So like now everybody's dressing in like the high bright colors and stuff like that. So it's easy to interview people that have a different mindset on how they want to dress in the morning, or what do they feel like putting on in the afternoon, or that AS220 swag, because everybody gets dressed according to what everybody wants to see in AS220. And AS220, we got our own swag there, because people will wear like a certain pair of sneakers to a certain class to make sure nothing gets on their other sneakers. And or some people are just get dressed or get ready for a photo shoot they set up with the photo team. So like a lot of the interviews was like a lot more easier to do, because like everybody we interviewed was swagged, as you've seen in the trailer, and hopefully we get to show you more people with more swag. So there is
Cool, thanks, Mike. I think before we go on, Charlene is also helping coordinate the fashion show, and I think that she just has another few things that she wants to talk about as far as how that's going.
So Gigi came up with the idea of doing a fashion show showcasing the African clothing. And she told me about it, and I knew it was something that I had to get involved in, because I've modeled in a lot of fashion shows, and at my college I've also helped plan fashion shows. So we partnered up, and so she has like most of the connections and stuff for the fabric. But then I'm really good for helping out like with the models, like with the choreography. But then I also, because I've been involved with shows, I can think of like some of the little things that we might be forgetting. So it's just a partnership, and we're working together to have this ready by the 23rd.
So as you guys can probably tell, there's like a ton of creative energy in the studio. And basically, as staff people here, we just have to put the idea out there and then get out of the way, because these guys are figuring it all out on their own and have great concepts and are very, very motivated and like to move forward with things. So it's exciting to see. So I think that's all the information that we have, but we would be happy to take any questions. Talia had to head out, but Mike and Charlene and Ryan are still here, and we would love to hear any feedback.
Wonderful. And I'm going to ask all of you, if you don't mind, to stick around in the chat. We're going to have to go off the air for just a minute or two as we transition to our final session for the day. But if you don't mind, we'll continue to post the questions in the chat box as they come in, and we'd love to see your responses there.
Okay, sure. No problem.
Great. Well, a big thank you to you and your team that's gathered there. Once again, some really cool projects and great video, great interviews. It was so nice to get a look at them.
And so many great projects with so much good energy behind them. Thank you all so much at AS220. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Okay, sure. Our pleasure.
Great. So thank you, everyone who's joining us now. We'll just be going off the air for 1 or 2 minutes at most, and then we'll be right back with our final session. So stick with us. We'll be back with you soon.